There are certain sentences you remember your whole life, even if you wish you could forget them. For me, it was this one, delivered by my mother in the calm, clipped tone she used when she was done with a topic. Claire, the estate is already decided. There's nothing for you to worry about. We were sitting at her kitchen table, the same table where my dad used to spread the Sunday paper, circling baseball scores and terrible coupon deals as if they were treasure. Now the table was spotless. Too spotless. No paper, no coffee rings, no crumbs. Just a neat stack of envelopes and my mother's hands resting on top of them like they were classified files. It had been 3 months since my father passed. 3 months since the heart attack that shattered the quiet routine of their suburban life. 3 months since the funeral, the casseroles, the endless, if you need anything, let us know, messages that faded more quickly than they were offered. And in those 3 months, my mother had become sharper, colder, more controlled. She wasn't cruel. She wasn't openly hostile. She was just managing everything in a way that left no room for questions. Especially from me. Already decided how? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Dad always said we'd go over everything together as a family. Mom exhaled in that way that made me feel 12 years old again. Your father didn't want you stressed about money. He told me to handle it. He also told me I'd be involved, I said quietly. That we'd sit down, the 3 of us, and go through things. Her eyes flicked up, cool and dismissive. He said a lot of things when he was sick. That stung more than she realized. Dad hadn't suddenly started promising fantasies on his deathbed. He'd been saying the same thing for years, that transparency mattered, that secrets destroyed families, that when the time came, I'd be treated like an adult, not a bystander. But now he was gone. And she was rewriting the script. I watched her fingers tap the stack of envelopes, every motion controlled. Look, Claire, she said, softening her tone just enough to sound reasonable, you have your own life. Your job. Your apartment. You don't need to be tangled up in all this. Your father and I planned everything. I'm comfortable. You'll be fine. I'm not asking for money, I said, more firmly than I expected. I'm asking to understand. You keep saying, the estate, but I have no idea what that even means. His accounts? The house? The retirement fund? What did he decide? Her lips tightened. We don't need to dissect it. We do if you're telling me not to ask, I replied. Because that's exactly when I start to worry. Her eyes hardened, just for a second. You were never interested in the finances when he was alive. That's not fair, I whispered. You both shut me out whenever I tried. Remember when I asked about the mortgage last year and you said, that's not something you need to think about? Or when I asked about his life insurance and you told me, we have it handled. She shrugged. We did. I felt that familiar mix of frustration and sadness rise in my chest, the one I'd been swallowing since I was old enough to understand that my mother didn't see me as an equal. I was the child, even at 35. The one who was supposed to visit on holidays, say nice things, and stay out of the grown-up conversations. Minnie's son handled everything when her husband died, I said. They sat down together with the lawyer and the bank. It wasn't just her. Mom's jaw flexed. Well, I'm not Minnie. And you're not her son. The message was clear. This is closed. Stop pushing. My fingers curled around the mug in front of me, the tea long gone cold. Did Dad leave anything to me directly? I asked quietly. Accounts? A policy? Anything with my name on it? She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Claire, you don't want to start thinking like that. It's ghoulish. It's not ghoulish. It's responsible, I said. If there is something tied to my name, I need to know. Legally. That did it. Her smile vanished. The temperature in the room dropped in an instant. Legally, she repeated, as if I'd insulted her. Is that what this is about? Do you think I'm trying to cheat you? I hesitated. I think you're trying to control everything. And I think Dad didn't want that. She stared at me long enough to make my skin itch. Then she stood, gathering the envelopes into her arms. We're done with this conversation, she said. Your father's estate is already decided. The bank accounts are settled. The house is in my name. There's nothing for you to sign, nothing for you to claim, and nothing for you to worry about. You're my daughter, Claire. You'll be fine. I opened my mouth, then closed it again. Because what was I supposed to say? You keep telling me there's nothing to worry about, and that's exactly why I'm worried. I watched her leave the kitchen, the stack of envelopes clutched tightly to her chest like a shield. I sat there alone, listening to the hum of the refrigerator, feeling the invisible wall she'd built between us harden into concrete. That night, I sat in my apartment, staring at the same sentence over and over again in my notes app. Mom said the estate was already decided. Already decided by who? On what terms? With what documents? I thought about calling a lawyer. Then I thought about how that would go. You're overreacting. You're ungrateful. You're accusing your own mother. I closed my eyes and pressed my fingers against my temples. Dad used to call me the quiet detective. When I was little, I'd sit at the edge of grown-up conversations and pick up details everyone else missed. He loved that about me. Mom called it nosy. You notice the things people wish you wouldn't, Dad told me once. That's a gift, if you use it right. So I decided to use it. Not by confronting Mom again. Not by shouting. Not by accusing. By paying attention. It started with mail. A week later, I stopped by the house to drop off some paperwork from Dad's workplace. As I walked in, Mom was at the kitchen counter, sorting through envelopes like a Vegas dealer. I noticed the logos before she covered them. First National Bank. Summit Financial. A small local credit union I didn't recognize. She slid one envelope under a magazine when she saw me. My stomach pinched. You're early, she said. Traffic was light, I replied. Need help with anything? I've got it handled. Of course she did. I set the folder from Dad's office on the table. His HR department needed you to sign those. She nodded, barely glancing at them. I'll take care of it later. I hesitated. Were any of those from the bank? Her shoulders tensed. Why? Because you said everything was settled. Banks don't usually send this much mail if everything is settled. Her eyes snapped up to mine. Claire, not everything is a conspiracy. There are statements. Closures. Normal processes. I held up my hands slightly. I'm not accusing you of anything. I'm just asking to understand. Well, I'm telling you, there's nothing to understand. That familiar wall again. Thick. Smooth. Impenetrable. Only this time, I noticed something I hadn't before. Her hand was shaking. Just barely. Just enough to make the corner of one envelope tremble between her fingers. Fear. Not of losing money. Of losing control. I didn't press. Not out of weakness. Out of strategy. There's a difference. The crack came 2 weeks later. I was at work, halfway through a spreadsheet that refused to balance, when my phone buzzed with an unknown number. Normally, I'd let it go to voicemail. But something in me said, answer it. Hello. Is this Miss Claire Monroe? A professional voice asked. Yes. This is Allison from First National Bank. I'm calling regarding the account of the late Mr. Thomas Monroe. My heart stuttered. That's my father. I'm sorry for your loss, she said gently. We've been trying to reach you. Reach me? I repeated. I didn't know you needed to. We sent notification mailings, she said. But they may have been routed to your father's primary address. My mind flashed back to the envelopes on my mother's counter. Notification mailings. And, what is this regarding? I asked, keeping my voice steady as best I could. There's a beneficiary account here, she explained. Payable on death. Your name is listed as primary. We require your signature to proceed with disbursement. I gripped the edge of my desk. My name? Yes. Ms. Claire Monroe. This account cannot be closed or transferred without your authorization. We've received some documentation from Mrs. Monroe, but we still need yours. Cold clarity washed over me. Mom said the estate was already decided. Mom said there was nothing in my name. Mom said there was nothing for me to sign. But the bank? The bank was saying something else. I can come in, I said, my voice suddenly very calm. When do you need me? At your earliest convenience, Allison replied. We can schedule an appointment with the branch manager to walk you through the process. The branch manager? I asked. Yes. Given the size of the account and the conflicting paperwork, he requested to speak with you directly. Conflicting paperwork. Something inside me went very, very still. This wasn't just about being left out. This wasn't just about Mom protecting me. This was about a legal line my father had drawn with my name on it. A line my mother was pretending didn't exist. Can we set something up for tomorrow? I asked. Absolutely, she said. 10 a.m. with Mr. Harris, our branch manager. I wrote down the time, the address, the name. After we hung up, I sat at my desk, staring at my reflection in the black screen of my monitor. Quiet. Calm. Focused. Dad's words came back to me. You notice the things people wish you wouldn't. That's a gift, if you use it right. Tomorrow, I'd walk into a bank thinking I was just his grieving daughter. But I'd be walking out knowing exactly where I stood. And for the first time since he died, I realized something simple and sharp. The estate wasn't already decided. It was waiting. For me. And the next move wouldn't belong to my mother. It would belong to my signature. I barely slept that night. Not because I was anxious, but because something had shifted inside me. Something subtle but unmistakable. Like I had been walking through fog for months, and suddenly a thin line of sunlight slipped through. Dad did leave something. And he left it to me. Not to us. Not to the family. Not for Mom to manage on my behalf. To me. By morning, that thin line of sunlight felt like a door beginning to open. The bank branch was quiet when I arrived, wood-paneled walls, carpet that muted every footstep, soft music playing overhead like it didn't want to bother anyone. A woman at the desk looked up. You must be Claire. She already knew. Yes, I said. Here for Mr. Harris. She gave me a polite smile. He's expecting you. This way. Expecting me. Another sentence that stayed in my chest. She led me down a hallway past glass-walled offices. People inside typed on keyboards or talked quietly on phones. Normal banking life. Normal business. But I wasn't here for normal business. She stopped at a door with a plaque, Branch Manager, Robert Harris. She knocked lightly and opened it. Mr. Harris, Claire is here. A man in his late 50s stood from behind his desk. Tall, composed, with glasses that made him look like someone who read complicated documents for fun. He stepped forward and extended his hand. Ms. Monroe, he said warmly, I'm very glad you came. Very glad. I shook his hand. Thank you for making the time. Please, he said, gesturing to a chair, have a seat. The moment I sat down, he closed the door behind me, and the atmosphere changed. Professional, but serious. Respectful, but purposeful. He took his own seat across from me and opened a thick folder with my father's name on the tab. Before we begin, he said, I want to express my condolences. Your father was a good man. We spoke several times over the years. I swallowed. Thank you. He banked here for a long time. He did, he said. He also left very clear instructions. And that's why I asked to speak with you personally. That sentence slid across the room like a key turning in a lock. Clear instructions. For me. He pulled out a form, the kind with signature lines and legal declarations. Your father opened a beneficiary account about 2 years ago, he explained. Payable on death. Your name is listed as the sole beneficiary. I held my breath. Sole? Yes. He folded his hands. You are the only one allowed to sign for its release. I stared at the paper as if it were glowing. Dad had done this quietly. Carefully. Intentionally. Ms. Monroe, he continued, lowering his voice slightly, we've received multiple communications from your mother requesting account closures and transfers. However, none of those requests can be processed without your authorization. My pulse thudded. So she had been trying. Trying hard. She told me everything was settled, I said quietly. That there was nothing in my name. Mr. Harris exhaled the soft, patient sigh of someone who had seen this before, families twisting, hiding, fighting behind closed doors. I can't speak to her motivations, he said carefully. But legally, this account belongs to you upon your father's passing. No one, not your mother, not an executor, not an attorney, can override that. I nodded slowly. He tapped the folder. There's something else. Another envelope. This one unopened. Sealed. With handwriting I knew instantly. My father's. He slid it toward me. He asked that this be given only to you. He left it with us for safekeeping. My chest tightened as I took the envelope in trembling hands. I didn't open it. Not yet. I wasn't ready to see his handwriting turn into goodbye. Next, he placed a printed document between us. This, he said, is the beneficiary account summary. I need to walk you through it. He angled the paper so I could see. And then, gently, he pointed. The number made my breath catch. This wasn't a small account. Not a small gift. Not symbolic. This was life-changing money. Money my mother had been trying to close. Money she'd been telling me didn't exist. Money Dad intended specifically for me. I looked up at Mr. Harris. She tried to close it. Yes, he said. Multiple times. Without your signature, of course, we couldn't act. Did she know it was in my name? He paused. Based on her requests, yes. She knew. Something inside my chest sank and rose at the same time. Sank, because my mother had been hiding this from me. Rose, because Dad had protected it anyway. Mr. Harris leaned back slightly, expression softening. Your father wanted you to have this without interference. He was very clear about that. My eyes stung. He said, Mr. Harris continued gently, that he trusted you to use it wisely. He said you had a steady mind and a quiet strength that reminded him of his own mother. The words slid into me like warmth. Thank you, I whispered, my voice breaking. He nodded. I just need your signature here to begin the disbursement process. No rush. I stared at the line. My name. My choice. My father's trust. My signature. I picked up the pen. Not for the money. Not out of anger. Not to win. But because Dad wanted this. And no one, not even my mother, had the right to rewrite his intentions. I signed. The pen barely left the paper when Mr. Harris said quietly, there will likely be tension when your mother finds out you initiated the release yourself. I want you to be prepared. I let out a slow breath. I'm prepared. Because for the first time since Dad died, I wasn't in the dark. I wasn't being told to stop worrying. I wasn't being managed. I was being included. Recognized. Declared. And the next chapter wouldn't be written behind my back. It would be written with my signature. Mr. Harris closed the folder neatly. One last thing, he said. Your father asked me to tell you something when this day came. I looked up. He said, my daughter will know what's right when she sees it. And she'll know when something isn't. My throat tightened again. He was right. I did know. And something wasn't right at all. Tomorrow, I would confront the person who lied to me. Not with anger. Not with shouting. With truth. With calm. With the power Dad left in my hands. Cold, silent success. The kind no one sees coming, until it's sitting across the kitchen table, asking the questions you can't hide from anymore. I drove straight to my mother's house after leaving the bank. For the first time since Dad died, I wasn't walking into that house feeling small. I wasn't unsure. I wasn't tiptoeing around her emotions or rehearsing ways to keep the peace. I walked in with clarity, a sealed envelope in my purse, and the memory of Dad's voice in the bank manager's office. My daughter will know what's right when she sees it. The house smelled the same as always, lemon cleaner and lavender candles. But today the air felt heavier, like the walls themselves knew a shift was coming. Mom was at the dining table sorting papers, as if the universe wanted to make the symbolism too obvious. Claire, what are you doing here? She said, glancing up briefly before returning to the documents. I set my purse down. We need to talk. Her pen froze mid-stroke. About what? The estate. She sighed deeply, the tired, theatrical kind. Claire, we already went over this. Everything is settled. No, I said calmly, it's not. Her eyes narrowed. What's that supposed to mean? I pulled out the appointment card Mr. Harris gave me and placed it on the table. I went to the bank today. She stiffened. And she didn't say, why? Or, what for? Or, how can I help? She said, you shouldn't have done that. That one sentence revealed everything she'd been trying to hide. I had to, I replied softly. They told me they'd been trying to reach me. She swallowed, her jaw tightening. There was nothing that required your involvement. That's not what Mr. Harris said. Her eyes flicked up, sharper now. You spoke to the manager? Yes, I said. He asked to see me personally. A flash of something Fear, anger, both, passed over her face. Claire, she said slowly, you are misunderstanding something. Those accounts were for the household. For retirement. There wasn't anything designated, there was, I interrupted, gently but firmly. A beneficiary account. In my name. Her lips parted slightly. That's not, your father never, he did, I said, pulling the printed form from my purse. I placed it on the table between us. Her eyes scanned the top line. Then the second. Then the beneficiary name. My name. The color drained from her face. That can't be right, she whispered. It is. I would have known, you did know, I said quietly. You tried to close it. Her head jerked up. I was trying to handle things, without me, I finished. You told the bank everything was already decided. You told them you were managing the estate. You didn't tell me anything. Her voice grew sharper. Claire, you've never handled large finances. You're not responsible with, that's not true, I said, my tone still soft but steady. You told yourself that. But Dad didn't believe it. She flinched. A tiny motion, but unmistakable. I continued gently, you didn't keep this from me because you thought it was best. You kept it from me because you wanted control. Because you were scared of losing it. Her hand tightened on the edge of the table. You don't understand what it's like to manage everything alone, she snapped. After your father died, I had to handle funeral costs, the mortgage, the credit cards, and I would have helped if you'd let me, I said. But you shut me out of every conversation. Because it wasn't your place, it's my legal place, I said quietly. That silenced her. Silence can be louder than shouting. Silence can reveal what someone really thinks. Silence can expose guilt. And right now, the silence between us felt like a truth she'd avoided for months. She had tried to make the estate hers alone. Not financially, emotionally. Control meant security for her. And she clung to it so tightly she pretended Dad hadn't trusted me at all. The envelope that broke her, I reached into my purse again and pulled out the sealed envelope, the one Mr. Harris gave me at the bank. Her eyes locked on it instantly. What's that? A letter Dad left for me. She inhaled sharply. For you? Yes. He deposited it with the bank for safekeeping. She stared at it like it was something dangerous. I haven't opened it yet, I said softly. Because I wanted to know why he felt he had to leave it somewhere you couldn't access. That landed like a stone dropped into deep water. Her voice trembled. Claire, give it to me. I shook my head. No, Claire, it's mine. Her breath hitched, not from anger. From realization. A realization I had not intended to deliver harshly, but that arrived with its own weight. Dad trusted me with something precisely because he knew she wouldn't. Her fingers curled slowly into her palm. I didn't mean to. I didn't think, I know, I said. I know you weren't trying to hurt me. You were trying to keep everything together. But in the process, you pushed me out of the one thing I should have been part of. I was scared, she whispered, breaking. Scared of losing everything your father built. Scared I'd open something I couldn't manage alone. I softened. Mom, you don't have to manage it alone. She looked up, eyes wet, pride trembling like thin glass. But you didn't trust that, I said. You didn't trust me. A tear slipped down her cheek. I didn't want to burden you. And you ended up hurting me instead. Her breath shuddered. She didn't deny it. She didn't argue. She didn't deflect. She just closed her eyes and let the truth sit between us. We sat like that for a long moment, her grief finally surfacing, and mine finally being recognized. The shift when she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. What happens now? I looked down at the envelope in my hand. I read Dad's letter, I said. We go through the estate together. Honestly. Transparently. And you stop assuming I don't deserve to be part of this. A single tear slipped down her cheek. She nodded. Not dramatically. Not desperately. Just once. Softly. Like a door opening a crack. For the first time in months, I felt something unclench in my chest. Something warm. Something like the beginning of forgiveness. Not because she deserved it yet. But because Dad would have wanted it. Cold, silent success doesn't mean humiliation. It means standing in your truth so clearly that the other person has no room left to pretend. And Mom wasn't pretending anymore. I didn't open the letter right away. I couldn't. Not while sitting across from the woman who had been rewriting the story for months. Not while the air was still thick with tension and the sharp edges of unspoken things. Not while her pride was still struggling to swallow the truth she hadn't planned on facing today. So I slipped the envelope back into my purse and said quietly, "I'll read it later." Mom nodded, wiping her face quickly, almost angrily, as if tears were a betrayal of her control. "I'll make some tea," she murmured. Tea. The default ceasefire in this household. But I didn't stay. I couldn't, not yet. "I need some time," I said softly. "I'll come back. We'll continue going through everything. But I need a minute to myself." She didn't argue. She didn't guilt me. She just nodded and sat back down, her hands trembling slightly on the table. I left the house without another word and drove straight to the only place that ever quieted my mind, Dad's old workshop behind the community center. He volunteered there for years, teaching kids how to use tools safely, fixing shelves, carving little wooden animals that he gave away like candy. Nobody ever locked the workshop because Dad had a way of making every place feel safe. I parked in the gravel lot and walked up to the small wooden structure. The door stuck a little from humidity, but I managed to pull it open. The moment I stepped inside, the smell of sawdust and varnish swallowed me whole. And for the first time in months, I let myself breathe. The letter. I sat on the workbench where he used to sit, the afternoon sun slanting across the floor in beams that looked almost solid. Dust floated in the air like tiny memories refusing to settle. With both hands, I pulled out the envelope. His handwriting, slow, careful, a little crooked on the edges, looked exactly the way it always had on birthday cards and grocery lists and the messages he left on the fridge. "To my daughter, Claire. Open when you're ready." My throat tightened. I slid a finger under the flap and opened it gently, like the paper itself might crumble under the weight of what was inside. The letter was 2 pages. His words, soft. Measured. Completely him. "My Claire, if you're reading this, I'm gone. And that breaks my heart more than any illness ever did. Because I want to see your life play out. I want to watch you walk into every room with the quiet confidence you never give yourself enough credit for." I closed my eyes, letting his voice come alive in the shape of every sentence. "I know your mother. I love her. I always will. But she holds on to worry like some people hold on to religion. She clutches it until her knuckles go white. And when she's scared, she tries to control everything. I knew she might try to manage things alone. That's why I set up the account in your name, sweetheart. Not because I distrusted her, because I trusted you." My breath hitched. "You have always been steady. You listen. You think before you speak. You don't raise your voice to be heard, you let truth do the talking. That's a strength few people ever learn. So I'm giving you something special. Not just money. Not just an account. I'm giving you a seat at the table. A voice in the things that matter." I wiped my eyes as a single tear slid down my cheek. "You will know when something is wrong. You always have. If your mother tries to take everything on herself, don't let her. Not because you need anything from the estate, but because you deserve to be part of the decisions. You deserve the respect she forgets to give when she's scared." My fingers tightened on the paper. He understood her. He understood me. He understood everything. "Take care of her, Claire. She'll need you. But don't let her silence you. Don't disappear into the background. You matter too much for that. Love always, Dad." I didn't realize I'd started crying until a tear splashed onto the page. Dad's handwriting blurred briefly before coming back into focus, like even the letter itself wanted to wait for me to breathe again. I pressed the paper to my chest, holding it like it might crumble, like it might vanish if I let go. It wasn't just a letter. It was recognition. Validation. Permission. And something else, something I hadn't felt since he died, direction. He knew Mom's fear would twist into control. He knew my silence would be mistaken for weakness. He knew the estate would become a battlefield of emotions. He knew I'd hesitate to assert myself. So he gave me something to hold onto. Not out of favoritism. Not out of money. But out of faith. Faith in me. The shift inside me. I folded the letter gently and slipped it back into the envelope. Then I sat in the workshop for a long time, letting grief and gratitude sit side by side inside me like 2 old friends finally reconciling. Dad wasn't asking me to fight. He wasn't asking me to argue. He wasn't asking me to conquer anything. He was asking me to show up. To take my place. To claim the voice he saw in me long before I saw it in myself. Cold, silent success doesn't scream. It doesn't pound the table. It doesn't demand acknowledgement. It just arrives. Calm. Still. Unshakable. And that's exactly who I would be. Not for revenge. Not to punish my mother. But to honor him. Going back home when dusk settled, I drove back to Mom's house. Only this time. I didn't feel like a daughter being managed. I felt like a woman stepping into the space her father prepared for her. Mom was still at the table when I walked in, her eyes red, her posture deflated. She looked up. Claire. I sat down across from her and placed the envelope gently on the table. I read it, I said softly. She nodded, swallowing. Did he say anything about me? A lot, I said. Good things. Honest things. She looked down. He always understood me better than anyone. I reached across the table and took her hand, something I hadn't done since Dad died. And he understood me too, I said. He left the account for a reason. And I'm going to be involved in the estate. With you. Not behind you. Beside you. Her chin trembled. For the first time in months, she didn't argue. She whispered, okay. Just that. Soft. Small. Open. A beginning. Mom didn't speak for a long moment after she whispered, okay. It hung in the air like a surrender, like a truth pulled from somewhere deep, somewhere she'd been avoiding since the moment Dad took his last breath. She wasn't the villain. But she was the gatekeeper. And now she wasn't anymore. She looked down at our hands, mine steady, hers trembling, and I saw something soften in her expression. Not weakness. Not regret. Not defeat. Recognition. Recognition that the daughter she'd tried to keep shielded was no longer a child. Recognition that silence wasn't the same as helplessness. Recognition that Dad had seen something she hadn't. Something she'd overlooked. Maybe even underestimated. Claire, she whispered, I didn't want to lose control. I didn't want everything to fall apart. I squeezed her hand gently. You didn't lose control. You lost trust. And we can fix trust. Her eyes glistened. You really want to do this with me? After everything? Yes, I said simply. But this time, we do it together. The quiet rebuilding over the next week, we sat at that same dining table every evening, going through Dad's estate piece by piece. Documents, policies, accounts, old insurance files, paperwork tucked in drawers she hadn't touched in years. For the first time, she didn't shield anything. She asked questions. She let me read. She allowed me to sign. She shared decisions instead of announcing them. It wasn't perfect. There were moments she slipped into old habits, hiding a form, brushing away a question, hesitating before handing me a document. But every time she did, she caught herself. Sorry, she'd say, quieter each time, sliding the paper my way. Old instincts. And every time, I took it without judgment. Because cold, silent success isn't about punishing someone. It's about showing them who you became while they weren't looking. The day she found the envelope one evening, while sorting through a drawer full of loose papers, Mom pulled out an old manila folder with Dad's handwriting on the tab. Her hands froze. What is it? I asked gently. Her lips parted. It's the retirement instructions. He said he'd only fill this out if something scared him. She opened the folder slowly. Inside was another envelope. Her name on it. For a moment, she didn't breathe. Neither did I. She held it like it was made of glass. He left you one, and he left me one. I nodded. Tears welled in her eyes. He thought of both of us. Of course he did. She opened it carefully, like someone afraid of breaking a fragile truth. Her eyes scanned the first lines, and she broke. Collapsed into the chair. Shoulders shaking. Hands covering her mouth. I moved beside her and rested a hand on her back. What did he say? I whispered. She handed me the letter with trembling fingers. Dad's words were simple, gentle, painfully clear. My love, if you're reading this, I'm gone. And I know you're trying to hold everything together. But you don't have to carry it alone. Let our daughter help you. She is stronger than you realize. Trust her. She won't let anything fall through the cracks. And she won't let you fall either. Mom pressed both hands over her eyes and sobbed, not the tight, controlled tears she always allowed herself, but deep, unguarded grief. He knew, she cried. He knew I'd shut down. He knew I'd cling to everything I could still control. He knew I'd push you away because I was scared. And he trusted you to carry what I couldn't. I wrapped my arms around her, feeling her shake, feeling years of unspoken fear spill out between us. He trusted both of us, I said softly. Just in different ways. Mom nodded against my shoulder. I'm sorry, Claire. For trying to handle everything alone. For not telling you. For thinking you weren't ready. I didn't tell her it was okay. Because it wasn't. But it was human. Instead, I said, we're doing it right now. And that's what matters. When the paperwork was finally done a week later, we submitted the final documents to the estate attorney. Everything was clean. Everything matched. Everything was transparent. We walked out of the office together, not as mother versus daughter, but as two women who had survived the same loss and finally admitted they needed each other. In the parking lot, she turned to me. You know, she said softly, your father used to say you were the calmest force he'd ever known. I smiled. He said that? Yes, she said. He said you'd never have to raise your voice to be heard because the truth would always settle on your side eventually. My chest ached in the best way possible. He was proud of you, she added. And now. I understand why. Those words, coming from her, meant more than I expected. That evening, back at her house, she poured 2 cups of tea and set them on the table. The same table where she once told me the estate was already decided. Only this time, she pushed 1 cup toward me and said, Claire, what would I do without you? It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't emotional manipulation. It wasn't guilt. It was gratitude. Honest. Quiet. Raw. You don't have to do anything without me, I said. Dad didn't want that. And neither do I. She reached across the table again, and this time her hand didn't tremble. She placed it over mine and whispered, almost too softly to hear, you're stronger than me. I smiled, not with triumph, but with understanding. No, I said gently. Different. Not stronger. Different. She nodded slowly. And for the first time in my life, my mother looked at me not as a child she needed to protect, but as a woman she could trust. Cold, silent success isn't about winning. It's about clarity settling into a room so completely that no one can pretend not to see it anymore. It's the kind of revenge that doesn't hurt the other person, it simply reveals what was true all along. Dad trusted me. The bank recognized me. The law supported me. And eventually, my mother understood me. No shouting. No arguments. No power struggle. Just truth, unfolding quietly, until all the pieces finally fit. The goodbye that didn't break me. Later that night, when I was home again, I sat on my couch with the lights low and opened Dad's letter one more time. The last line whispered through me like a steady heartbeat, show up, sweetheart. That's all you ever needed to do. He was right. I had shown up. Quietly. Steadily. Completely. And it changed everything. Not with noise. Not with force. But with presence. Cold, silent success. The kind no one sees coming, until it's already done. And that is exactly what Dad wanted for me.